Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Hager part number AB7507. This is it's an unusual hinge to be sure. I think in my career of just over 30 years now, I don't know that I've sold many. I know that I've not sold very many of these. I have, but anchor hinges are really unusual for me to sell. And I think that's for a couple of reasons. First of all, let's just do a visual tour of the hinge. So they look very unusual until you start to study them, and then you realize, oh, that's interesting. There's really only one way for that hinge to work, meaning they have to be handed. That's first and foremost. And when you realize that they can only be handed, there's only one way this can go onto the door. And then the second thing you'll start to realize, yeah, I have to order these as rights and lefts, there's no doubt. And that's what this is. So first of all, this is a Hager AB7507. That means it's an anchor hinge. Where it begins is the fact that it's a 5-inch hinge in terms of height. That leaf height is 5-inch. This happens to be a 4.5-inch wide version, which is also a really good idea for an anchor hinge. And we'll talk about that width next. It has a couple of fabricated, welded-on pieces here. Okay. That get mounted to the underside of the header and the rabbet, and then to the top of the door. Let's take some dimensions of both of those. The door portion length, and this is all on the template, but just to put it into context, about 3 3/4 by about 1 1/4 inches. The header portion, careful, would probably be best measured from the projection of the leaf all the way out. It looks like it's about 4 7/8, and that's gonna be 1 1/4 inches, I'm sure. Yeah. This is a 7507, which means it's a heavyweight hinge. Let's get the caliper and see what that tells us. Should be 190 thousandths. Is what I expect this to be. Yeah, spot on. 0.190 is the leaf thickness. So now we've done a bit of a visual tour on this hinge. And by the way, this is what it would look like, from the outside. You don't see any of this. When you open up the door and look up, yeah, you're going to see this in the... actually, you're not going to see this in the door. You'll see just the evidence of this, but then you'll see the header component here. It's a 3-knuckle hinge. That's also part of the part number. But where are you going to use this? Why might you have stumbled across this or are specifically looking for it? And why do I sell so few of them? And why is 4.5 inch a good width for this hinge? Let's talk about that now. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. So first, why do I sell so few of them? I figure it's because you don't see them specified very often. At least I don't. I have come across them in specifications. I have seen them in hardware sets, and they're so unusual that I have to look up the part number. I say to myself, oh, that's a part number that I should probably be familiar with. I wonder why. And when I look it up, it's an anchor hinge. So I don't come across them often. The other reason I think that I don't come across them often is, well, obviously they're not specified very often. They're not installed very often. Number two is that there's not a lot of reason to replace these. It's known that the top hinge in the installation carries 70% of the weight of the door. If you look at any door that's existing, whether it be commercial or even residential, that door has a tendency to be quite true plumb level and square when it's installed. And then years of use, abuse, etc., that door seems to lean away from the jamb. What happens is the hinge can wear down, the door can start to sag, the margin and tolerances between the pin and the barrels all now are larger, where that door is not only tempted to move down, but also come out of the opening because the hinge has more play in it. And basically what's happening as the hinge is used over, let's say, millions of cycles, even if it's residential, even if you have a coat closet in a home, after 10 years, you're going to have wear on that top hinge, guaranteed. Because all 70% of the weight of the door is on these intersecting sections. And that is just causing that metal on metal, even if it's ball bearing or concealed bearing or friction reduced type of principle, that's just wearing away as the door opens and closes over hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands of times. The issue, though, with the anchor hinge is because the leaf in the frame and the leaf in the door are fixed in their vertical position, that leaf can't, the leaves can't separate because they're restrained by these straps. Will these hinges wear with time? Sure, there could be some sag. But in terms of the door tipping out of the opening, the anchor hinge all but solves that. It would be typical to see these in extreme high volume applications. The front doors of a Greyhound bus station, your major metropolis city hall, sports stadiums, schools, airports. You'll see high frequency hinges like an AB7507 because they keep the door where it needs to be over the millions of cycles that are encountered. Think about a busy airport. We've all been to them and through them. It's astronomical, the cycles of usage over these openings. Anchor hinges are meant for that. But even in moderate volume applications, where if you want to set it and forget it, think of an anchor hinge. They're not cheap. Your door and your frame are going to have to be prepped specifically for that. That could throw a wrench in the works depending on who you're sending the door and frame order to. If it's a major hollow metal manufacturer, that's all in a day's work for them. If it's a wood door and frame manufacturer that does a lot of residential work, this might not be what they are going to be comfortable doing or agreeing to do. But I can tell you, regardless of the application, light volume residential all the way up to the busiest of doorways, you get wear on it no matter what. In a home, your garage door, your attached garage door, your coat closet door, you'll notice the wear and tear on those doors a lot more than the secondary bathroom that's off the hall versus a storage closet. That top hinge is going to noticeably have wear to it. The margins between the knuckles will be greater, and there'll be like a black powder in there sometimes as well. It's that steel being pulverized and then powderized over the years. So it's easy to argue against an anchor hinge when you're talking about an application that doesn't call for it, and then you add on top of that the impact in terms of cost. And conversely, it's easy to argue for it when you've got a door that's going to see a million cycles really quickly. You know, pick the major city, the anchor city for Delta or United or American. Their terminals are astronomical. They're not going to want to spend hundreds of dollars to get someone out there to scratch their head at a sagging door. Specify the hardware the right way. Another reason why you may not see these that often is because I did see these a lot more in the mix in 1990 than I do in the year 2023. Well, that's because in the late 80s or so, the entire Roton, a Hager name, a Hager brand, came on the scene. Continuous hinges. They've all but solved the problem. This is the buggy and whip to the... You see the analogy. But if you're going to do butt hinges and you don't want to do continuous hinges for whatever reason, the anchor hinge is nice. You don't see it. The 7507 is a 3-knuckle, so it's architecturally pleasing to the point that hinges can be architecturally pleasing. It's less busy than a 3-knuckle hinge. It's a concealed bearing application. Now, I had talked about why 4.5 inch is a nice dimension. Well, it's a nice dimension versus a 5x5 because that 4.5 will bring the vertical axis of pivoting actually closer to the face of the door. This is where the load is being borne out here, right over the vertical axis of pivoting. The more that you tuck that against or to the center line of the door itself, the more efficient the job will get done, the more capable the hardware is at doing its job. Wide throw hinges that are, let's say that you had a 5-inch hinge that was 8-inch wide. That's a non-load rated hinge because it's wide throw. That pivot of axis all the way out here, it will really wear down the hinge or the hanging mechanism as that door comes out and open. So they could have done this 5x5. It was designed to be smarter than that. Someone realized, I don't need to have a 5-inch wide hinge. I can tuck that vertical axis of pivoting closer because that is considered best practice. Plus, projecting hardware is never a good idea on doors. You want to tuck that hardware to the face of the door or frame as much as possible, whether it be hinges or strike plates, whatever it is. You want to keep it from encroaching into the space as much as possible. This is going to come with your standard 1224 flat undercut head, probably thread forming screws for machine, and then typical number 12 by 1.25 inch threaded to the head wood screws, and both in a Phillips drive. This is in a US26D finish. That means it's satin chrome. This is better called 652 because it's made of steel. It's a steel-based hinge with a satin chrome plating, and this is a right hand. Okay, you're on the pull side of the door. This door is going to come out towards you just like this. Oh, left hand is obviously going to be reversed with its straps. Let's switch to the screen view and let's take a closer look at all of the supporting information. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Okay, let's take a look at this beautiful hinge. Here's the profile of the hinge in our site. Let's look first at some images that we have posted. Here is the label that's on the box, AB7507, 5 tall. The height's always the first dimension on these hinges. And the width, the finish, and right hand. This is a non-removable pin hinge as well. We didn't ask the factory to make it NRP, but that's how they sent it, which is certainly how you would want to specify it. It could be by default that it's security pin, but we'll look at the cut sheet and we'll determine that. Just different views of what this hinge looks like. That's literally looking from a plan view when the doors open at 90 degree. That's what it is. The door would be here would be open at 180 degrees, showing you the hinge leaves. Trying to show you what that NRP is. So what the deal is with that is there is a pin driven down in here, and the non-removable pin, how that works is like this. So in that hinge, you've got, this is the barrel. You've got that NRP, we'll just draw it over here. Non-removable pin. You've got that set screw. That set screw is drilled and tapped into a hole that's here. Well, that's really not going to work just by having the set screw touch the side of the pin. And this is an exaggerated view, but your hinge pin is actually grooved like that. Oh, that should go all the way down on this hinge. Okay, so it's grooved. So that set screw really seats into this prep. Driving that out from actual experience attempting it is I would consider it impossible. I've tried, it can't be done. Could it be done? Possibly, but you would destroy all of the surrounding material just in the attempt of getting it out of it. Loosening that screw, obviously, you can see what happens. You loosen that, then that pin can be driven out, is the bottom line. Okay. Then your screw fasteners. It looks like there are adequate screws here. There's generally 2 packages. Well, pardon me, there would be 3 packages for 3 hinges generally, but you've got extra requirements here of screws. You've got, the top straps that need to get them. Now, let's take a look at the template. This may be of some help figuring out what it's all about. Maybe it's not. This is a template. It's a reasonably generic template. This is actually a template for a BB1165, and that means a 5-knuckle hinge, whereas we have the 3-knuckle version, the AB. The 1165 and 7507 mean they're made of steel. You can do it in stainless steel base material and very likely brass base material as well. I've never seen one of these in a brass base material, but nonetheless, if you were going to do this if you were going to use anchor hinges on an extremely high frequency application exterior, you would want an AB8507. That would be my recommendation. 3-knuckle stainless base material, probably brushed finish. It's the most durable of all possible finishes. Let's look at the product catalog. This is just a cut sheet coming out of the manufacturer's full line catalog that gives us a summary of what we're looking at. So we've got an AB7507. And then we've got an AB8507. Now, really, really important to discuss this. You've got 7507, 7509, 8507, 8509. First of all, the difference in these two part numbers is just the base material. Steel with a steel pin, brass with a stainless steel pin, or stainless steel with a stainless steel pin. But the 07 and the 09, what's the difference there? Well, it's indicated. This customer specifically has a square edge door in an 07. If you have a beveled edge door, you need the 09 variant. Now, the reason for that is because the way that the hinge, I'm looking for a good view. The way that the leaf is bent you've got two hinge leaves here. It's grotesquely out of scale, but the bend that's here, well, let's do this. The angle in relationship to here is important. If you have a square edge door versus a beveled I'm trying not to make it too extreme. A beveled edge door, that angle needs to change. If you try to put a square manufactured hinge onto this beveled edge, the leaf is not going to sit on here very well. It's going to really sit in a very exaggerated fashion. It's going to want to sit like that when it obviously needs to sit like this. That's how it needs to sit. So that bend, or what we call the swage, I've heard it called, I call it swag, is where you're going to have the difference between those part numbers. There's not a lot you can do when you've got the wrong leaf. In fact, meaning square versus beveled and vice versa. If you've got the wrong hinge, don't even try to install it. You might get the door to seal over a weekend, but you'll need to get the proper hinge. Okay, there is some information down below. This alignment is not really happy right now, but by the time you're seeing this video, it will be corrected. Full mortise, that means both leaves are flush with the jamb and door when they're installed. Steel hinge, steel pin. Anchored door leaf, 4-inch. That's going to be more of a reference to the strap length. Concealed anti-friction bearing, 3-knuckle. Non-removable pin standard. There you go. That's why this is NRP. For heavy use doors, basically, they're saying. Now, there is a link below this video, as seen here, to the manufacturer's page. And when you click on that, you'll be able to pull up not only all of the Hager products we sell by means of this horizontal navigation, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, and a link to the manufacturer's most current product catalog here. And if there are any encyclopedic documents for this manufacturer, this would be the page that I would add them to, such as the Hager Keying Service Manual. Handy document to have if you're working within the Hager platform of keying, their own keyways, their own approach to keying. Finish guide, the A117.1. This document refers to installing material that's in compliance with ADA requirements. Hager sells lots of hardware that needs to comply with that, such as thresholds. Okay. For fun, there's a 1915 catalog here from Hager, a catalog that's well over 100 years old at this point. It's going to prove to be an extremely large document, so if you want to take a trip into the era, you know, the World War I era, you'll need to be patient. You might even want to consider saving it locally. You might be able to work it faster than pulling it over the internet. 1915. Hager, I spoke to a Hager employee not too long ago. I believe they have one that's older than this in their possession. I would imagine they do. But page 64, you've got a 5-knuckle, probably a 3 or a 3.5 inch hinge, ball tips shown here, etc. One interesting thing, yeah, they've got a index here. Yeah. Let's take a dive into this document. Now, this hinge is 26D. You might know it as US26D. Let's take a dive into that. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. All right, let's dive. So, this is Hager's finish chart. Nowhere around here will you find US26D. In fact, that system didn't exist for about 25 years after this document was published. The US system wasn't brought into existence until about 1930, plus or minus. What you'll see here are these letter codes. DC, dull copper. That makes sense. B, brass, bright. Silver. SD, silver, dull, natural color. I would say that that's probably US26D right there, SD. Silver sanded. Silver sanded, slightly oxidized. Silver sanded, mottled. You know, Verde antique? I don't know what that is. What's Verde antique? Maybe in 1915 the word Verde may have been far more common, and I may have just known that. But I don't today. I could guess what that is, but I don't know what it is. Yale and Town. Russell and Irwin, P and F Corbin and Sargent, cross-reference chart. The U.S. system was brought into existence via a government-led initiative with a consortium of major manufacturers to come up with a standardized system. The point being is the couple who was building their home in suburban Detroit in 1890 we're not buying all Yale and Town or all P&F Corbin material. They might have hinges and locks from P&F Corbin, but they really love the window hardware from Yale and Town. And they were finding in this cross-reference chart, I've never seen a cross-reference chart in any of these catalogs. It is in the Hager. But without knowing truly that there's uniformity between finishes, you'll get stuff that doesn't match. The true point of all of this, however, is standard bronze from Hager and standard bronze from Yale and Town and these other three companies were not the same finish. They were complementary and looked similar, but if you're building a new home, you want all your hardware to match. So that US system came into existence. So US26D is satin chrome. And if you order US26D from any manufacturer, it will all be the same chemical formula that goes into that material. A conversation about BHMA is a different conversation altogether, but if we were speaking of BHMA for US26D, we'd have to know the base material. Is it 626 or 652? Anyway, let's wrap up this video on camera. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. So we may have said everything there is to say not only about the AB7500 anchor hinge, or the 7507 anchor hinge, but also the US finish system as well. The name Hager is truly synonymous with hinges. Hager Hinge is the company name that most of us know them by. Hager is a lot more than hinges, a lot more. Hinges, lock sets, exit devices, electrified hardware, door closers, continuous hinges, trim and auxiliary, weather stripping, sliding door hardware, and many other items. They have everything for the door and frame except the door and frame itself. If you have any questions on the AB7507 5x4.5 and the US26D in a right hand or any other Hager product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.